Welcome to another episode of the Above the Business podcast. My name is Bradley Hamner, your host. On today's episode, we have Josh Kropkof. So we talk about email marketing on this podcast. I don't know about many of you, but I share in the episode, I didn't even really know that email marketing was a thing until like 2018. And so in this episode, even if you are not one who's ever dived into this idea of email marketing, I think that this will give you an idea to begin to think about how to possibly structure emails and how to even begin to look at email marketing as an asset to your small business and even the value of the list itself. I picked up a lot from this. I enjoyed connecting with Josh afterwards. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Josh Kropkof. Josh, welcome to the Above the Business podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be
Excited.
here.
Yeah, excited to connect with you. So we always start with a background and origin story. I think it's just fascinating to see kind of how people's their careers and entrepreneurial journeys, et cetera, just take different twists and turns.
Oh
Take us
yeah,
back wherever you want to begin and bring us to present day.
for sure. I guess my story for this kind of would be 10 years ago is kind of where it starts. Because 10 years ago, I was finishing up college in New Jersey, where I grew up, and I had gone to school for hospitality and thought I was going to like work in the casinos and hotels in Atlantic City. And I did work there in college, but basically that was not something that I wanted to do my whole life. And I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I ended up in law school. I ended up moving to Florida and attending law school at the University of Miami. And it wasn't really because I wanted to be a lawyer. It was more just like, let me kind of buy some time to figure out like what I want to do. And I was interested in the law, and I had people tell me, get into law. So I was like, all right, let me try that. But somehow from there ended up in this world of digital marketing. So that's the interesting part. So um, before that, growing up, my brother and I had always been really into entrepreneurial stuff, and we always had this idea that like we want to start a business, but we didn't know like when or how that would happen in real life. We just kind of had this goal, and so he was going to college at Florida State, and I went to law school at University of Miami. And during this time, sort of fell into the world of digital marketing by mistake, and also email marketing. And the reason was because I was on this email newsletter I belonged to called Dating Advice Daily. So when I was in college, I was kind of a shy guy. I was kind of a shy kid growing up, and I sort of struggled in college with like, people, you'd go with your friends to these different parties and stuff, and they'd be like super confident with approaching women and so forth, and I was kind of like that shy guy. So I went online to kind of find help with this, like how to get better at this, right? And so I stumbled across this newsletter called Dating Advice Daily, and it was from this guy named Jason Capital, which is kind of a cool name. And he would send an email every single day with actionable tips and advice to get better at this area of your life. And it was definitely meant for guys in their like early 20s, like I was at the time. And so what was cool, I had no idea what to expect. I had never signed up for an email newsletter before. And so I didn't know what to expect, but the first email from him was like basically rules. Like, here's the rules. You're going to get an email every single day and you have to read it. And I'm gonna, give you actionable advice. You have to take action. People on this newsletter, people on this list, we're called Team Capital, and we take action on these things. We don't just sit around and, kind of goof off, but we actually do the thing, and that's how we get the results. And also, I'm gonna sell things from time to time. I have different programs and courses, and paid products and memberships that I'm going to sell. And if that bothers you, then please unsubscribe. Don't be on this list. So I was like, whoa, like I've never seen anything like this before. Long story short, it ended up, being a really awesome thing to be a part of. And, it helped me at that time, and it was really cool. But when I was in law school and sort of trying to figure out, do I want to be a lawyer? What do I want to do? I'm still reading this newsletter I still get this thing every day, and I'm still reading it. It's still relevant. And he sort of pivots to teaching more about how he became a millionaire in just a couple of years with this dating advice daily newsletter. And so he starts to, reveal these things to the email list about email marketing and about how he actually, used something called copywriting, which I had never heard of at the time, but it's basically like psychological selling. And so he starts revealing this stuff. And I just kind of got hooked on these ideas, and I was like, this is really cool. And he tells this story about how one weekend he wanted to go to Vegas and see if he could somehow, go to Las Vegas and spend all kinds of money, but end up making more money just by sending an email to his list. So basically covering all of his expenses in Vegas. And so he quickly created a program. It was like a 10 video program. It was something you could go through in a day. And he put it on sale for, I think it was $47 to his list. And he sent out an email about it on Friday. Came back on Monday, and that email had made him over $50,000. And so he tells us this story. And so at that point, I'm thinking, like, what am I doing in law school? And like, how are people making this much money like online and with an email list? And so he ends up, year goes by or so. He ends up holding this live event in Las Vegas. This was in, I believe, 2016, where it was a conference of all kinds of people in this digital marketing world who all had email lists and had all grown businesses online. And so my brother and I ended up going to this conference, and basically our minds were blown and our lives were changed forever of like we kind of decided, like, we've always wanted to start a business, like maybe it should be something in this field, like something with digital marketing. um, and then fast forward a little bit, we initially did start a business selling digital products, and that business did not succeed. It kind of, that's a long story I won't get into, but basically in 2016 and 2017, our first attempt failed because we kind of didn't have a real solid foundation for what we were doing. And it was kind of our first stab at it, after I graduated law school and just went right into this. But what we learned through that experience was the power of email marketing, and we had our own email list at the time, and we were able to sell things to that list. So what ended up happening is after that business idea failed, we realized that we could take the skill that we were developing over the course of a year and a half with copywriting and email marketing, and we could provide it as a service to other businesses that needed this service. And so from there, we ended up with getting in touch with a mentor, a different mentor in the space who was an email copywriter and email marketer for decades, had owned various agencies and sold them and different things like that. And this guy, his name's Mike Becker, basically taught us the business of email marketing, and also made us much better at copywriting, digital marketing, all this stuff. And we realized at some point along this journey that there was this gap with e-commerce businesses specifically, where they were not using the things that we had learned to make email successful. The most e-commerce businesses, and this is still true to this day even, are kind of stuck in sort of the old like way that email marketing was kind of done in like 2005 and 2009 and stuff, where it's just very much looks like a
Mhm.
billboard advertisement. And so we realized we could sort of bring this more direct response skill into email marketing for e-commerce businesses. So that's the origin story. I know that was long. I tried to fit a lot in there, but I hope
No,
that
it's
that
good.
was kind of gave you a good idea of how I fell into this world.
No, that's great. I actually don't know him at all, Jason Capital. So yeah,
Really?
I've heard his name get thrown around quite a bit. I actually didn't know that kind of a background to be able to do it. I have
Yeah.
to say, I don't know when it was. I mean, but it would have been like 2018, maybe was the first time that I even heard like email marketing is a form of marketing. I mean, it
Really?
wasn't even that long ago.
Okay.
And so as you were talking, I was like, man, when was the first time? I mean, I was in business for a while before I even like looked at that. And so when people would refer to your list, I was like,
Hmm.
I don't know what you're talking about. And so maybe I won't answer that. I'm going to let you answer those kind of things where it's like,
Yeah.
I never looked at that as an asset. And
Okay.
it seems like that with increasing security controls on with the fight between, let's just say Apple. I know people
Mhm.
have other phones,
Yeah.
um, but between Apple and Facebook
Hmm.
or Meta,
Yeah.
Apple and other platforms that are out there,
Hmm.
that there's a ton of social media marketing agencies out there, and listen, rightfully so. Okay, for sure. But it seems like that while that had really taken off, email kind of began to slide back down. Yet you're starting to see now people, now that I'm more in this space, people are talking about the value of your list,
Yeah. Yeah,
the
for sure.
value of like the blend basically of pulling people from your social network, right? And in doing that, or from your podcast and
Hmm.
pulling them into a list that you own. And maybe why don't you take some of that? Because if I was listening to this podcast 6 years ago, I would have been like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. I don't get the value of it. I've never done email marketing, et
Yeah.
cetera. So why don't you break some of that down?
Sure. Well, it's perfect what you said. What the list that you own, right? The traffic that you own, that is your email list. And that is something really, really important is like everywhere else that you get traffic from online, whether it be organic traffic that you don't control, right? It's kind of like your SEO, your appearances on podcasts and things like that, and ways that people find you through social media. You can't exactly control that traffic. Then there's traffic that you do have more control over, which is your paid media, right? Where we're buying customers. But then there's the traffic you own, and all that consists of is your email list, SMS, like phone numbers, if you do that type of marketing, and direct mail, if you do that. Those are true assets of your business. So, like if you sell your company one day, you are able to use that in the valuation. They can put a dollar figure on that list if you've treated your email list well, and you're able to show like this is how much each person on this list is worth on average. That factors in, right? So it's really important and a really, I think, cool aspect of email marketing and why it's so cool. But it's funny what you mentioned about 2018 and kind of like not even really thinking about email marketing because that was when our business was founded, this current business, the email agency. And one thing is kind of our name, how we came up with it. At the time, I was totally broke because our first business had failed, like I mentioned, and we were kind of struggling during that period. And my brother was in his last year of college at Florida State, and I kind of lost everything and had to move in with him. And he just had this little studio apartment on campus, and I slept on the floor, and I was there for about 5 months while we built this agency. And when we were looking at different agencies out there, like that was the thing. We knew what we wanted to do, but I came up with the name the email agency because I was like, it's weird. Like there's so many agencies online now that are doing social media marketing, PPC, SEO, all of that. But like, I don't see any that are like email is our thing. Like that's the main thing we do, or that's the only thing we do. So I'm like, let's just call ourselves the email agency. And then we came up with the letters TEA for the email agency. So our logo is a teacup with a T on it. So it's kind of cool. But anyway, that's changed completely. Now there's like a million email agencies out there. It's funny like how fast things change. But but yeah, I think what you were mentioning about like sort of the landscape out there with between Apple and between Gmail and all the different, environments. Like it's not just social media anymore. Now, email is definitely more challenging than it used to be. There's a lot more considerations out there. I was talking to a client earlier today who is having some concerns over some things with the way that they're collecting emails because apparently there's some new law going into effect that's only going to be in Washington State, and it's going to be like the most strict privacy protections. I don't know a lot about it yet, but it's something I got to look into. But it's a funny thing, like all of this stuff. Not a week goes by where there's not some new change in the environment that may affect how we do things. So I think that
Yeah.
that's definitely true across all marketing channels at this point. But email is definitely um, still one of the, if not the most, I guess, free in terms of like you have the most freedom with your email list to market to them the way that you want to, and that's why it's so effective. But that's definitely changing a little bit. There's still challenges to that. But
Hmm.
one thing that won't change, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Matthew Dunn, but he's a big guy in the email world. Um, I talked to him. He has a podcast that I was on not too long ago, and he was saying how like because of the infrastructure, the way that email works, and he's somebody who worked on like email back in the 80s. So like he was in the original like infrastructure side of it. He was like it can't really be controlled by a single entity, and that's what makes it so cool because it's unlike all these other platforms. Email is really it was created for everyone. So it really is synonymous with the internet itself, and that's what makes it so cool in terms of how we're able to get our messages across to people. I've connected with people through email, even cold email, that I never would have believed would answer an email from a stranger, right? So that's another interesting aspect of it. I know I kind of ramble onto things, so feel free to cut in here, but I hope that sort of answered
No, it
everything.
does. Yeah, it's good. So I think it's kind of like I felt. I try to on all of our podcasts to ask questions from a genuine place of curiosity for
Yeah.
myself, and I hope that that ends up serving our audience. And so, as we were talking, I was listening, and I was actually going to our operating system, and I was looking down, and I was looking at our marketing playbook, and email marketing is on there, right? And I was kind of just taking a cursory glance at some of these things. And I thought, yeah, they're okay. They're okay. And I think it's like meaning they're okay, as in like I haven't given it enough thought. Okay.
Okay. Gotcha.
I haven't, I'm like, yeah, do we have a new lead sequence? New lead sequence means, and maybe you have better language than that. That's just what we call it. But like
Yeah.
somebody opts in to something we have, these are the new emails that they get. Okay. So that's one. New customer. What's the welcome email that they get when they become a customer to us? What's maybe the series of emails that we sent?
Mhm.
Okay. What are some of the basic general rules,
Mhm.
okay, when it comes to, and maybe let's just start around not a customer, a lead, okay? A
Yeah.
lead. Somebody's just come into my world, into anybody's world. What are some of the do's and the don'ts that you've seen, right,
Sure.
that actually work? And then I've got some other questions around people that I've heard Russell Brunson, ClickFunnels, right? And
Yeah.
people like that. And they're just like some of them, they send emails like send three a day. And you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
dude, if you
Mhm.
send three a day, I'm opting out of that. And so I think there's like you get whether it's around systems and processes like that's my
Mhm.
life forte, that you get conflicting messages, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh, send them an email a day, and then somebody else says like, no, 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 you don't want to do that. You want to send it 3 days a week, right? As an example, they need to be
Mhm.
plain text emails. No, 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 you need to have it to where it captures. It's like all of these conflicting messages, and it's like I don't know where the heck to go with all of
Yeah.
this, and so it's like, well, I don't know. We'll put something together and see if it works.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, we can unpack some of that. I think at the at its most basic, you got to remember what email really is, like what it's for. It is a space for conversation, and it is also private, meaning that you're not on Instagram, you're not on a social media page where everyone's seeing everything. It is a one-on-one space, right? So when I receive an email from someone, and I'm not sure who it is, I'm automatically suspicious of that. Like, why am I getting a cold email, right, from somebody? Now, I'm in the industry, so it's a little different. I kind of, I understand slash expect it a little bit, but in general, like, you got to think about it as that private space, and it is a one-on-one thing. So I think that one of the problems in email marketing, and this is something that I see a lot more of because our agency specifically services e-commerce businesses, and sort of these like more product focused brands, um, where they sort of get caught up in, I guess, the sort of more corporate style branding of what they're doing, and they forget about the fact that email is a personal channel. And so what doesn't work as well anymore is emails that look, feel, sound like just another ad, right? People are, consumers in general, all of us in general, are way more conscious of marketing. We're way more sophisticated than we were when, the internet was still relatively new. Um, and it is the responsibility of the business and the business owner and whoever's in charge of the email marketing to sort of live in the now and kind of bring the program, or bring the emails up to speed with like the changing sort of tastes of your customer, right? And what I mean by that is, um, if you send emails that are just constantly hounding people for to buy something, to buy your product, or to take you up on another sale, or to just show off more of your products, and that's all you do, those people are going to very quickly become desensitized to that marketing. They're not resonating with that message. Um, what you want is, and again, we talked a little bit about the value of that asset, your email list. The way that you make that more valuable over time is you keep people engaged. You don't have this attitude of churn and burn, or I've heard this phrase before, buy or die. Like,
Mm,
someone signs up to the email list and I'm just going to keep giving them sales, keep pounding them with deals and sales and promotions, until they either buy or just get off the list. And really what happens is they don't unsubscribe. They actually are still there. They just don't care anymore, and they're not reading your emails. And it would be better if they unsubscribed, but they're not. They're just kind of hurting your deliverability, your reputation, because they're there and they don't care about you. They're never interacting with your emails. What's more valuable is if you're sending them things that they open and they have genuine interest to see what you're sending them, because they feel a connection. So how do we do that? Well, the basics of it is, again, remember, it is a conversation. It's a personal place. So I always tell people, um, you are going to get way more from making the emails actually come from a person. And this is something that's way more, like, I think, easy for a business person like you or I to understand, and probably a lot of the people in this audience who have a similar business to us, where maybe it's a service business, because we've kind of always looked at it that way, where we know
mm,
that it's built around us, so we don't have as much of a problem with that. Whereas some of the larger brands, or even small brands, but they're like selling physical products and they're kind of trying to seem bigger than they are. They're like, no, I don't want to put a person behind my messaging. Like, it's just a
yeah.
brand. And there's nothing wrong with branding and email marketing and having emails that do seem like, okay, this is the brand advertising. It's just that you don't want to only do that. You have to have some kind of a connection there. So the way that you get a connection is you have emails that read as though I'm hearing from a person on the other side. Like, there's an actual human talking to me. Um, And so there are all kinds of things you can do. So like you mentioned about like a lead or somebody who just opts in. Um, in my world, we call that pre-purchase, right? They've heard of you, they've taken that step to opt in, and now they are raising their hand. They're saying, I want to learn more. How do we convert that first sale, right? So there are things like that, pre-purchase, post-purchase, sales cycle abandonment, all of that stuff. These are parts of the customer journey. You definitely want to have email sequences in place to cover that. But I think that at a more fundamental level, you're better served as a business person by thinking of email like a radio show. Uh, so radio broadcasts, if you've ever listened to a talk show on the radio, the host will basically get on the air, usually the same time every day or certain days of the week, and they will continue the conversation from last time. They'll, welcome you back. They'll talk about, what's going on right now, right? And it's very current, and they're gonna have different conversations. Maybe they're taking callers, right? Maybe they're, talking about a certain news story, or if it's sports radio, they're talking about a sports team. If it's political or something, it's going to be focused on that. But the point is, you're tuning in, and you may not tune in every day, um, but they're there. They're always there, and you know that they are. And so when you tune in, you're hearing from that person, and you kind of develop this relationship with the broadcaster. So email actually works the same way. You're there, you're showing up, you're in their inbox. I am, if you mentioned Russell Brunson sending like 3 emails a day, and Grant Cardone, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh
He's
yeah.
famous for sending. I'm still on his email list, but yeah, sometimes it's crazy. It's like, dude, he sent 10 emails today about something, some webinar or something, right? And I may not pay attention, but it's funny. Like I don't unsubscribe, and maybe that's because I'm in this world, but no, he's very, very successful. I use him a lot as sort of an extreme example. But I think what matters more is that it's not about emailing too much. It's more about consistency, because I don't have to read every email from you. But you're showing up, and when I'm ready to, I'm gonna, engage. And also the flip side of that is, if you barely show up and then I get an email from you, and maybe you're only emailing, and there are companies that will send an email to their list once a month. And unfortunately, people forget, like, and you're not thinking about it, but people forget they signed up. They haven't heard from you in a while. They forget who you are. They might not even give you the grace of 10 seconds to actually look at your email and figure out and remember, oh yeah, that's right. I signed up for this. A lot of times they'll just report you as spam, and that's really unfortunate, right? Or they'll just unsubscribe. They're like, why is this guy talking to me? So
Mm.
it's better to be sending more frequently than less, and it's better to be, um, more consistent. But at a fundamental level, you want to remember the conversation, and remember that your job, when email marketing, is to continue having that conversation.
Hmm. I I was trying to think through what are some of the people that I get emails from that. So I actually don't do a lot of unsubscribing, but I do filter a lot. So
Mhm.
what I mean by that is in my Gmail accounts, which I have like seven of across the businesses.
Yeah.
But I'll filter them in there, and there's only a few that when I set the filter up, that because I want my inboxes are clean. I keep, I mean, certainly less than 10, maybe even less than that in my actual inbox.
Mhm.
Um, and my bigger point here is to say that there's only a few that make it to where they stay in the inbox. The rest of them, they actually just automatically get filtered into that. So if I wanted to go into those and read them, I could. And I was trying to think for me what makes up the ones that I actually read. And so I was like, well, it's clearly a topic that I'm interested in for sure. I mean, that's one of them. The second that I was thinking through is that for the most part, the emails are interesting to read, right? I'll give you an example of one that obviously has done incredibly well, but and I'm sure you're super familiar with it. But Morning Brew, right? Morning Brew
Yeah.
has done an excellent job. Now, I don't read Morning Brew, and I'll tell you why I don't read it anymore. I didn't unsubscribe from it, but I'm not a big news person. It
Mhm.
changes my disposition a little bit on some of those kind of things, and so I really try to stay out of the news as much as possible. So some of that stuff, although they didn't do a terrible job, I was like, it's just not worth me doing that. But I thought they do an excellent job with the way that they have their email. Okay, so I'm getting to a question here, which is
Okay.
that email has a general structure, but it's kind of beautifully designed.
Mhm.
Then there's a couple other people I follow their emails. They're literally plain text. There's no images, there's no pictures. It's just words,
Uh-huh.
right? It's
Uh-huh.
just words on the email. So that's why I'm saying it gets a little confusing. Like I'm sure you work with some e-commerce brands where it's like, no, there's needs to be visuals that are there. And
Oh
then
yeah.
there's maybe other times where it's like, nope, we're not doing anything. Here's this information. There's one link at the bottom. Click the link to buy, and that's it. So like
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
how do we square those two things up?
Well, it could take a whole podcast to do that, but I'll give you my best answers to this. Because yeah, this is something that it's very much a part of my business. One thing about this that I want to say at the start is that no matter what, whether it's an email that is a has almost no copy in it at all, but it's got a lot of design and imagery, or whether it's the other end of the spectrum, the other extreme where it's like a plain text email, or it is a plain text email with some blue hyperlinks in there. Every email is made up of the same stuff. They have the same parts. They need to, they should. Every email has a subject line. That's obvious, right? But let's talk in the email. So every email has a lead or a hook, a body, a close, and a PS. And even if it's a if it's a design email where you can't as easily identify like where's the close and the PS in this email, but it's still there. And each part of that email has a purpose, and that's where I think a lot of brands don't really they kind of get it wrong because they're not thinking about the different parts and kind of what should be there. But so really we work with brands in I think at this point the last time that I counted this for our marketing we were over 100 different niches that we have worked with since 2018, so in the last 5 to 6 years. um, and niches meaning selling everything from sports gear to furniture to pet food to sex toys. They're like so many different things, right? And so some of them they all have different styles. Some of them are much more like copy heavy, I'll call it, where others are really big into design, and it all works. I think a challenge that I have faced and continue to work through over all the years of really focusing on e-commerce is to bring these two worlds together, design and branding, and also direct response copywriting, because there is sort of this dichotomy there. And sometimes these are like warring factions in the marketing world. And the design people are worried about how to make the email display correctly in dark mode or on Android devices, and that's what they're debating about. And then people in the copywriting world are debating about things like the USP and the unique mechanism and how to handle objections and tie features to benefits to pain points and all that stuff, right? So how do you blend those things?
Yeah.
And that's been my challenge. It's always, and clients and brands can come from either one of those spaces, because even if they're a brand that is a little bit more on the copy side, like we work with a men's sexual wellness brand that traditionally has written mostly text emails, but there is stuff that we want to bring into that space that is more design, because design absolutely is an important part of email marketing. So
Hmm.
um, I guess all of that is to say that like these things all work. I think the biggest problem people have is sort of like a fixed mindset rigidity when it comes to this stuff where they're like, no, like, all I care about is that my email looks a certain way and that I have this font and this style of this color palette, and like I don't care about copy. Or the second that somebody brings up copy, they immediately are like, no, I don't want long text in my emails. It's like, well, that's not necessarily what it means. It could be 5 words, but what do the words say, right? So I think that it's important as an industry, email marketing as a whole, for these two sides to come together, realize that design is important. It's the look of your email. If you're in a business that it is, because there are businesses where it's not as important. I will say that. But if you are a business that sells, for example, apparel or something like that, like I gotta see it, right? I have to see it, and you are in a space where your competitors have good looking emails, so it has to look good. But on the other side, you cannot ignore fundamental marketing principles that have been around for centuries and have been used to convert people. So I think what it comes down, and when I say convert people, sales, and that's what it comes down to. Like, is your email getting not just the click, but is it actually converting a sale, or whatever the action is that you want them to take? And the way that you do that is with more fundamental direct response principles. Um, things like having a good hook, things like having a good USP, good product benefit descriptions, things like that. Um, Calls to action, not just, everything always says shop now. That doesn't really work as well as
Yeah.
more. So
What
that's,
what was the elements? I want to make sure I get that because I think that that is regardless of the business industry that we could all take. I think you went. I think you maybe called it the email structure or something. You said. I think you said
yeah.
subject line, open, body, close, PS.
Yeah, lead, hook, open, any of those work. But yeah, in the email, there's going to be a lead or an opening section, a body, which is going to be the meat of the email, a close, which is usually a call to action, and then a PS. You Now, in literal terms, we don't put a PS necessarily in every email, but the PS could be sort of that ending, footer space in the email where you have like that the information that you always have in your email template, right?
Yeah.
But it
Is that
could
also
also
kind
be a
of where I've heard people talk about things called super signatures? Like, oh, by the way, when you're ready, here's 3 ways that we could help you type
yeah, yeah,
stuff.
that works. Yeah, definitely. That
Yeah.
can be, and I have stuff like that in my email marketing too.
Okay. So don't be mad at me when I ask this next question. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask it honestly. And okay. So
Okay.
hopefully this is teeing you up. Okay. So Josh,
What?
there's this new thing out. I don't know if you know about it. It's called Chat GPT.
Yeah. Okay.
So why don't tell me, I want you to tell me, like, if I was going to go build my emails, I want to take them, throw them into Chat GPT and say like, write these better emails and just use off of that. How has that helped changed direct response copywriting for email and even for you guys?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have had different experiences over the last, year to 2 years, I guess it's been since ChatGPT has come out. So I think that where people get into trouble with it is to sort of like assume that they don't have to do anything anymore because they can just use ChatGPT. Um, what I have found is if you have a person giving it the prompts, like if you're going to use ChatGPT to write an email, and we'll stick to just talking about emails, but if you're going to use it to write an email, you do have to know how to prompt it to do that correctly. And
Yeah.
so I've seen people do that totally wrong. And that's when you do end up with emails that you kind of realize this was written by AI. And I get that sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, Other times, maybe it's just a feeling and you don't quite know what's wrong with it, but it doesn't quite resonate the same.
Yeah.
Um, we do have one of our email copywriters here in my agency is really loves ChatGPT and working with it, and so he has sort of his own system for certain. Um, I don't want to say emails because he doesn't really use it in the sense of like having it write the whole email, but he is good at prompting it to figure out basically topics and positioning for certain items that we're promoting for like the brand that he's working with. So like
Yeah.
he'll know that like this week, because like one of the clients that one of our good longtime clients is a company that sells commercial planters, like big planters for like they have planters in Fenway Park and the Cosmopolitan, Las
Hmm.
Vegas, places like that. And so there are consumers on the email list, but a lot of them are actually businesses too. Um, and so this is actually this brand's like busiest time of year. And so one of the things we found is that the list is responding really, really well to any email talking about pool and patio stuff. Anything to do with your pool and patio setup, even if it's a hotel or if it's just a person like a consumer at their home.
Hmm.
And so what he has been able to use ChatGPT for pretty successfully is basically coming up with new and new and new and new ideas on how to do new topics and new things around pool and patio to position this product a certain way. And so he is what I would call like a master chat GPT prompt engineer where he knows what to ask it to get the ideas that he can then write the copy from.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he also doesn't just have it write the copy for him because like if he does, then he still has to go in and edit it a lot from
Hmm.
whatever chat GPT sent. And that's been my experience too, because like I used it recently to write a description for our company in a certain online directory for agencies. And I found that like it still took a really long time and I had to edit the description like 5 times to get it, and I still am not really happy with it. But I'm not that good at ChatGPT like some people are. So I think my point is like even if you're going to use that in email marketing, you got to do it the right way. You can't just kind of like write it off and be like, all right, ChatGPT, write me an email to sell this product. Here's the features and the benefits. Here's the offer. The audience is this person, and then have it spit something out and it's like, oh, that's right, let me use that. I mean, you could. It's not going to be that effective though,
Yeah.
because it's not going to necessarily hook the same way. ChatGPT may have access to knowledge, hundreds of years of knowledge in direct response, but it's still not a direct response copywriter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. All right. So this is a simple question, and then we'll wrap up. Do you see email, and maybe the answer is both, honestly. Do you see email as a nurturing system or as a conversion system, or is it both, depending on the business?
Yeah, it's definitely both. Definitely both. They call it part of retention marketing. So like retaining customers, but it's also needed to get that first sale a lot of times. Um, so it's about conversion and yeah, nurturing, I'll say engagement. I think one of the best things you can do in that sense, by the way, and this is for everybody listening, that's kind of like thinking about how they might be able to just email their list better if you're doing it yourself, like, um, it's really important to ask questions and get replies. And that's something that
Mm.
a lot of companies, a lot of brands don't even do this. Sometimes clients are like surprised when when we bring this up. They're like, I never thought of that. But it's really important because it's the pulse on your list. It's understanding kind of where they're at. Because your job, like I said earlier, you're having a conversation. You're kind of almost like a radio broadcaster. You got to enter the conversation that's going on in their head. You got to know where they're at. So the
Yeah.
best way to do that is ask good questions, read your replies, use that to figure out what your next email is going to be. And it is always great to treat it as a conversation. And that's why I love when I get good replies to my emails, I will send an email out the next day featuring a good reply I got. Hey, John from Lexington, Kentucky answered my question the other day. Here's what he said. And I'll like paste like a little excerpt and then be like, that brings up a good point. And then I'll have my email off of that. So that's a really great way to nurture. And then when it comes to conversions, um, you absolutely want to talk about their pain points. The reasons why they would buy your products has to be, top of mind. And then, what are the benefits? What is the unique selling proposition? What are the reasons why they should buy? Don't just assume that because they signed up to your list, you can just throw a promotion at them and say shop now and it's going to work. It
Hmm.
is email marketing, so the blessing and the curse of it is that you can do it really poorly and it'll still work to some extent. But if you want to get really great results with it, you definitely want to use direct response copy in your emails.
I love it. That's great. Well, Josh, people want to connect with you. Where would you point them to?
So number one to connect with me, I would say my email list. And I made that really simple for people.
If you didn't answer it that way, I was going to be like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's super simple for anyone listening to this podcast. So, like, if you're driving or something, you don't have to like worry about it. You'll remember it's just email 123.club, email 123.club, and that is where you can join our newsletter, the Email Revolution. Um, and then, if you want to just find out anything else about like my agency, it's simple. Also, theemailagency.com.
Awesome. That's great, man. Well,
Cool.
Josh, the name of the podcast is Above the Business. For you, being a small business owner yourself, what does getting above the business mean to you?
Yeah, you said earlier that I'd be asked this, and you know what I was thinking about above the business is kind of taking more of a, I guess, longer timeline view of what you're doing.
Hmm.
Friend of mine always he's really into like studying billionaires. And he said that like while millionaires and people who have like $1 million businesses, a lot of times they think long term, but to them that means like 5 years, 10 years down the road. But billionaires think in terms of 50 to 100-year goals. And the reason is because they know that whatever they're building it's not about them, it's about the generation after them and their legacy, right? And all these people after them. So I would say above the business for me is that I have a lot of personal goals, my brother too, of like other businesses that we want to do in our lives. Want to get into real estate at some point, want to do productions at some point, things like that I'm into. But the email agency is really important, I think, because we are very much a business of our time that is doing something while this is becoming like a real strategic communication platform and of course marketing, but like those who can control or at least have some stake in marketing channels and kind of how who understand how to use traffic in this way like we talked about at the beginning of the show. That's going to be super valuable, hundreds of years from now maybe, or 100 years from now in ways that we can't imagine. So above the business to me, like I hope that what we're doing here is something that will help people grow their businesses and really have an impact beyond just right now, but hopefully like an entire economy, for centuries to come. God willing that things go well in the world or well enough that people can thrive. I hope that one day everybody, even just your average person, is able to have an email list and use it to spread their message and maybe make money some way. And that's sort of my long-term vision. So I'd say that's why we call our newsletter the Email Revolution. And so to me, that's sort of why we're doing this. And I'd say that's my above the business view.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. What a great answer. Josh,
Cool.
appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Brad.
I'll always try to give some tangible takeaways from me personally into this episode. I think a couple things stand out. Sometimes there are bigger pictures. I'm going to give you a bigger picture view of this episode or kind of a takeaway from me, and then give you a very tangible one. Number one, Email marketing is something that we do, but I had not given enough thought. And I'm going to be more intentional. I was actually, while we were on the podcast, I was even pulling up some of our email marketing Google documents that we have. And I put it on my to do list to go through and say, hey, I need to pay attention to this. I need to be more on top of what are we sending out? How are they being structured, et cetera? And that leads me to my second big key takeaway, which is what is the actual structure of the emails that we put together? And the third one is that, yeah, ChatGPT is one thing, but you got to be really good about what the prompts are of how to prompt ChatGPT. And so is it going to just, you know, throw together an email for you? Well, yeah, I can do that, but it's really about having the right structure to the emails and it's saying the things that you want it to say that speak in your voice. And that takes time and skill to develop even that of how to even prompt ChatGPT. But the first two, how to structure the email, but then also the bigger picture one, which is I need to pay more attention to this. And so that's what I'm going to do. I put it on my key takeaway and actually one of my action items. You want to connect with him and go sign up for his email newsletter. In fact, that's actually maybe one of the best ways to learn is connect with him, connect with him on LinkedIn, but also join his email newsletter itself. Go to, sorry, team, let me find it. Go to email123.club, email123.club. As always, shout out to our podcast sponsors, Club Capital, Coach P Consulting, Today at Pro, and Autopilot Recruiting. I think one of the biggest investments that you can make for you personally is in your own personal development and then also into your team. We work with two and partner with two of the very best to help you do just that. Coach P Consulting and Autopilot Recruiting. If you've not at least reached out to them to have a call, now's the time to be able to do that. We're in a time of a lot of change. Listen to Coach P's episode that recently came out. Go and reach out to him, have a conversation about how he can help you to give you the word tracks, the scripts that they're using in their business today, because the things that they were doing even a couple of years ago might be a little bit different than what they are today. And you can get inside access to that. You also want to recruit a team, really want to begin to scale your team. Or if you're looking to really level up the quality of the people that you have on your team, work with Autopilot Recruiting. Go to autopilotrecruiting.com and coachpconsulting.com. Josh and I were actually talking about different softwares that can do different things. There's so many different ones out there. And there can be a lot of different choices when you're talking about your bonus and your compensation plans and even where to put some of your scripts. If you're an insurance agency owner, Today App Pro does an exceptional job. Go to todayappro.com, todayappro.com. You can get away from the spreadsheets. Look, I love a good Excel spreadsheet as much as anybody, but they are limited in the things that they can do. They can get lost. They can not be updated, etc. It's going to be a much better experience. Plus, it's going to be connected to your corporate approved CRM, todayappro.com. I was talking to a business owner the other day around their financials, and they said, I just can't sometimes seem to find the time to do it. When you work with Club Capital, they'll be prompting you to be able to send in information so that you can stay on top of your financials on a regular basis. Book a no obligation demo. Go to club.capital. Art of one. Till next episode. Lead well.